Good afternoon. I'm Chris. I'm in conversation with Brian, right? Byron, excuse me, I'm sorry. I want to thank you for, well, first, I'm Chris. I am the curator and archivist who runs the Inner Life Archive 2.0, a Black queer orchestra project. I am supporting Recognize Our Pride for Pride Month series, where we talk to and interview and explore the lives of queer members who are part of Divine Nine. Today, I'm in conversation with Byron. I want to first thank you for agreeing to share your story. I want to first tell you how much I appreciate you being allowing us to be your witness, allowing us to learn from how you've navigated your life.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. Like you mentioned before, Chris, my name is Byron Terry, and I'm actually changing my name to Sankofa Savage B. So Sankofa, the bird, that means, go back and get it. Savage, Webby was my favorite rapper growing up, so had to pay tribute. And then B is for James Baldwin, which is like love James Baldwin down, like the most intellectual, eloquent reads I've ever heard in my entire life that still hold true today. Great, amazing author and intellect. And so like inspires a lot of things that I do. And also, as you can see, I got on these chains and they actually like are a Sankofa bird and then Savage. So like that's my name and stuff like that I wear them around. So
dope. But two fun facts. Baldwin got an honorary degree from Morehouse. Only university where he was allowed to give him an honorary degree.
That's what's up.
Mm-hmm.
I use he, they pronouns. I identify as a Black queer man. So yes.
Dope. Yeah, oftentimes people use Sankofa. I hear the word a lot, and I remember in college, a professor who was a Kappa actually, who went to Howard, always said people only understand the first part of Sankofa, but the entire process is going back to find what you lost in the past to bring that thing to the present to build a better future, which changes the entirety of how I feel about Sankofa, which is really dope. But it's cool that you're changing your name.
Yes. And I'll get into that later as we talk into more why that is important to who I am and my identity and things of that nature. So
dope. We can talk about it now. So let's talk about your identity. So you identify as they, them. Well, how else do you identify as a Black queer man? How'd you get to that point?
I identify as he, they, and I identify as a Black queer man. So like using Sankofa, right, or just thinking about how I just decided like to change my name, right? So a lot of people think that like, okay, you just want to change your name because it sounds like something cool, etc. But I think the reason why I say queer is because queerness is more than just like who I choose to sleep with, who I choose to be romantically engaged with, who I'm attracted to, etc. But it's actually just like a counter narrative to like the norms, right? So I was given the name Byron Sylvester Terry, which, obviously my mama and them, they did their thing. I'm proud of my name, Byron, and all that other stuff. But I don't think it really aligns with who I am, right? And the things that I know about this world. And so one of the greatest things about being queer, and I think that everybody can tap into this, right? Like I said, that's because it's so much more than just who we sleep with or who we talk to, but it's like tapping into not reinventing yourself, but returning to yourself, right? So you actually get to dictate and determine what things are valuable for you and bring those with you and like make those representations of you. And then also you get to let go of what isn't, right. As we learn and grow, we should always be able to change and grow, right? And so some of the things that we've always thought were so stable and stagnant, that have made us stagnant, we can really let go of. So like I said, Byron, great name, done pulled me through a lot, but it's not a name that I necessarily align with, right? Like it doesn't really hold much meaning. It isn't like my mama woke up and a dove dropped a piece of paper with Byron on it and she knew that was gonna be my name because it was a sign from God. And so because the other names for me, Chris was actually one of the names on the table and things of that nature, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. So we could have been two Chris's right here. But
my name was too common. I hate my name.
But yeah, so it's just one of those things that like, yes, I know what the name that was given to me means, but like I actually get to choose and decide every facet of my life, right? I get to choose and decide how I want to be seen in the world, how I'm representing the world. And a lot of people won't understand that. And that's okay because it's my own personal journey. Like none of the stuff I'm probably going to talk about today, it might sound, and Lauryn Hill said this, I'm going to give her credit, but it might sound like, woo, but it's heavy as bricks. Like it's as real as me and you, as real as these desks, these computers, these papers, because what you think becomes reality. And so like how I start to see myself, how I start to move myself in the world. And the more that I've come into myself, like the better that I've become, like the better I start to see myself and the better I start to see others and are able to understand others more. Even though I can't like physically put myself in their shoes or different things of that nature. But the more I step into myself and who I am and allow others into that space, the more I'm able to do that for them as well.
Dope. Let's talk about how your journey with your queerness. Well, when did you realize you were queer? When you realized you were part of in the life?
So, I would have to say definitely for sure 100% middle school, right? I would say that's when I knew for sure, but it was one of those things that it's raised to be, we're all raised in a homophobic society, right? So especially growing up Black, being in the church, so it's like it's ingrained in you to be homophobic. And so when those things or thoughts come into your mind, it's automatic, like, absolutely not, right? And then also you're young, you want to fit in and you want to be, you want as less troubles as possible going through school. Like you want people to pick on you for the less. And so that means like those things that might make you different or might make you seen as different, you want to completely hide or cover up. Granted, no matter how much I thought I was hiding and cover up, whenever I got into an argument with someone or like whenever I go into new spaces, even like in today's time, someone is always asking me about my sexuality and things of that nature. So I guess the only person I was really fooling was myself, but
how did that feel to be for your affect, for your voice, for your body language for them to put that on you growing up?
So I was definitely more conscious of everything, right? And so like even hearing my voice, I used to hate my voice, like to the point where I didn't even want to talk and say my name. Like I never, like when we go to different places when you're young and all these youth programs and stuff, I would hate having to get up and introduce myself because I'm like, okay, as soon as they hear my voice, it's gonna be something, etc. And like we hear our voice and it sounds a different way, but then when you hear it recorded on something else, you're like, this is what other people are hearing, right? And so it puts you in a box. Like, oh, I don't want people to hear that because it comes with other things, right? It comes with other thoughts and stereotypes that you're just not ready to deal with. And because this isn't something that is like, oh, okay, let's talk about it, have conversation or widely accepted, you don't have anyone to really turn to. And so it's like really isolating for real. And I
so
think
who supported you during the season from middle school to now in your queerness?
I would say growing up, like I said, it was really one of those things that I was in it alone, right? It was something that I was trying to be so far removed from for the longest. But I mean, I've always had close friends that like we didn't necessarily talk about things. But I mean, once again, like I said, I wasn't fooling anyone, in my opinion. Like now that I look back, I'm like, okay, like nobody was fooled. But as I started to come into myself and like actually start having conversations like with friends and my dean and line brothers and just different things of that nature, right? It was one of those things that created support. And actually, um, the fraternity is what even pushed me more into my identity, right? It's funny because I would think that it would push me away, but it even pushed me more into it because um to be in this frat, I definitely was like, you have to like be a certain way, right? To be a Q, like is the one of the most um hypersexualized masculine groups or whatever. So like all of our chants and hops and everything about us, it has this strong connection to women or in our relationship with women. And so um it got to a point after I graduated and moved away and all this other stuff, like, but I'm still in our Q group chats and different things of that nature. It got to a point where I had no other option, right? Because people would say things that I thought were like super homophobic, or people would say things that I didn't agree with and things of that nature, right? And then in the past, what inhibited me from saying things is like, okay, if you're too defensive, they're automatically gonna think that you're queer or gay or whatever. So you can't do that. But so knowing those things are wrong and sitting in that. So that's probably why even now in this, I can hear the trauma in that sentence, because even now, like I'm no holds bars, like ain't nothing getting past me, ain't nothing sliding. Like you said, what? Now what you mean by that? Like, okay, let's talk about it. And then if this happens in a group setting, I'm then gonna reach out to you on the side and say, okay, so let's continue to have this conversation that you had, because like there's no more like room for any of that. And so
Let's back up. Let's back up. So you are a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Yeah.
Why Omega?
So it's funny. So back in when I came to college, I had no interest in being Greek at all.
How old are you when you started college?
I was 18.
No, how old are you now? How old are you now?
31.
And you started school at what, 09?
2010.
Got it. Okay.
So I came into school not wanting to be Greek at all. So I'm from Paducah, Kentucky, and everybody that was Greek that I had seen, there were some Qs there, but I just didn't know at the time, and I didn't know anything about college because I was a first generation college graduate. And so everybody that was Greek was like an Alpha or Kappa, and I really didn't align with either one of them. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have no interest in that. I had some friends that knew they were going to be Greek when we were in high school and would talk about it and all that other stuff, but I could care less. And so I get to college freshman year. My RA is a Q. Hit one of his friends, which is also the bros or his frat brothers, which eventually they all became, my chapter brothers. I couldn't stand them. Right, he got my dean, who I love to death now and always talk to and all this other stuff. And confide in about a lot of things. Met him for the first time, was not it. Like was a miss. And so I finished my freshman year no more interested in being a Q than the day I was when I stepped on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to a probate. They had a summer line and they did a probate at the beginning of my sophomore year. And they come in, they march in or whatever, they throwing chairs, they're jumping into the audience, they doing all this crazy shit. And I'm like, I can get with that. Like, I like that. Now that's the type of stuff I like, right?
But what about the mayhem and the chaos made you want to go? I can get into that.
And like now that you asking that and like even putting some thought into it, it's probably because I had been so boxed up and caged up about myself so long. So just to people be able to be so free and like do wild shit and stuff like that, like really was like, yes, like draw me to it. And I've never even conceptualized that until this way just now, but like that's got to be the reason because my entire life I have been so boxed, and so like just to see people so free to do whatever they want to and like go outside the norm. It's just like that's my type.
So did you identify with your queerness sophomore year, or did something happen that happened later after you?
So no, during college I wasn't like accepting of it at all. Like it wasn't until after college.
So what was your voice? Was your affect? Was your gender presentation something you worried about, or something that got talked about during intake, or was it fine?
So the thing is, like I said, like I could kind of feel that was something that was apprehensive. So I went into my first informational in 2012, but they didn't pick me up until 2014, and I graduated spring 15. So I was only on the yard for a semester, right? And when those things happen, right, a lot of times I would always sit and think like, why me? My grades are good. I pretty much I got a known presence on campus at least or whatever. So I'm thinking like to be a Q is like the hardest thing in the world because why aren't they picking up on me, right? And it's not until after I cross and a while later that I find out that like questions about my sexuality were a part of it, right? Like why my voice sounded the way it does, et cetera, et cetera.
How did that feel?
Oh, like it definitely hurt, right? Because it's one of those things that like, and I had a conversation, right? And this is a tangent, but it's connected. So I had a conversation with some of my frat brothers. We were having this argument, right? And in the argument, I said that everything is racist. And so they're like, no, okay, everything is racist. What about Omega Psi Phi? I said, oh yeah, Omega Psi Phi is definitely racist because even though it's an organization created for Black people, it doesn't accept all Blackness. And so if you only accept a certain piece of Blackness, you're racist because you're leaving out so much more of Blackness, right? And so if you're mad that somebody's queer, trans, or just doesn't fit into what you want them to be, and this is created for Black people, and we know we let people of other races in, and things of that nature, then it's innately racist. Like you can't decide what Black is Black, and this is real Black, and that's this Black is this genetic Black or whatever you want to call it, etc. So, yeah, I've lost my chain of thought, but yeah, so that's kind of where it puts me at.
We're talking about how, upon reflection, after you crossed, realizing that your perceived sexuality was a conversation that inhibited you joining Q earlier in school.
Right. Oh, yeah. And so like even thinking about that today, like it took a lot away from me, right? And so like
in what way? Say more. What was taken away from it? Say more.
And so what I mean by that is like, for example, just time to be on the yard and be a Q, right? And so I crossed my last semester, my last fall semester of my college experience. And so that means I never got to be in a step show. I didn't have neos when I was on the yard. Tons of years of experiences and kicking it and get to know it and building and fellowship into the frat. I didn't get to have. Now, granted, I think the guy works in mysterious ways because I love my LB to death. Wouldn't want a different LB for like anything in the world. I love like everything about my experience, like the things that I've gotten, but that still doesn't change the fact that um, like it just put me in a different bubble, right? And so here I am, like 22, I'm about to be 23, Neo, and then my LB crossed his, because he had some credits coming in from high school, so he crossed his sophomore, first year sophomore semester. So like we had this huge age gap, and then because I'm a Neo and you get to, you be around other Neos doing Neo stuff. I'm having to like I'm with people that are younger than me and all these other things, and like all my profiles are older, so they have this certain level of power and range and things of that nature. And so it really took away a lot. Granted, I still have a deep love for the fraternity and my chapter and the people in it, and I don't hold those things against them. To this day, because like I'm not gonna hold on to that. But especially how they are, especially as they are to me now, right? Well, not all of them. Some of them is still like,
Touch and
but
go. So how? What school did you go to?
University of Louisville.
Okay. And were there visibly queer people in part of Dina on campus or no?
Yes.
And what orgs were these orgs?
I would say Sigma, Alpha, and Kappa.
And how were they consumed on campus? Was it cool or was it like a thing?
Cool, right. Like, yeah, they were fine.
Got it. So did that give you permission, or did you feel a way once you became a Q? Sometimes when a campus is inclusive or accepting or regular, the temperature around having to be something or prove something changes. But I wonder how your prophytes felt about these Sigmas, Alphas, and Kappas who are visibly queer and being hard on you or othering you.
Right. And so the thing is, because I hadn't had a conversation with them, et cetera, about who my identity, my sexuality or orientation or anything of that nature. There wasn't like even though they had these thoughts about me, they got to know me and all these other things. And so it's funny because a lot of times people want the best for you, right? And so a lot of times wanting the best for you, especially in this heteronormative world, is not wanting you to be queer or gay or trans or anything else, right? Not wanting the best for you isn't supporting you who you are, but it's like, oh, you know what? I just want you to have a wife and kids and a family and all these other things, right? So they kind of like just moved along with things, right? And so even like I said, throughout that time, like I kept up this front as much as possible. And it was cool, right? But there were obviously moments where people had like questioned or come about my sexuality or different things of that nature. And even like, and always, it's funny because even when I'm not around, like those questions or comments or things would always be brought up. And it just always reminds me of, well, it reminds me of that Megan Thee Stallion lyric, like, talk about something y'all like, stop talking about me. Like, since y'all hate me so much, because, or since you have this much hate, like, there's 10 billion other things to talk about in the world, but you're so focused on this part of me that you like one don't know about, haven't talked to me about. Like it consumes y'all too much. So it definitely created issues, right? Because I'm also the type that like if I hear you say something about me behind my back, we're gonna have to talk about this later. This ain't just no like, oh, y'all finna just make me feel bad about myself and bully me and all this other stuff. Like no, it's one of those things like I'm gonna definitely come see you. So it causes so much conflict for me, right? I just can't really have it feels like I can never have peace sometimes.
Is that a current thing or was that in the beginning?
Oh, that's current, right? Because I still have other like not none of my younger chapter bros or like bros that came in my area per se, but like older chapter bros, like they just always have something to say, like been called sissy plenty of times. And so one of them told me before, this fraternity is for men. You do know that, right? Like, just saying little stuff like that. So like, and this was like 2021 homecoming, right? And then you confront them about these things and have these conversations with them, and they gaslight you like no other. Like you could start a fire for how much gas they putting out. But it's all cool. Like all of it's cool because once again, um, I've always now that I know that I'm an outliner and like I don't move in this world and operate the same way, I know I'm not gonna fit into every space. I know I'm not gonna my thoughts are gonna be different. I know all that. So it doesn't hurt me to know that like this is actually what's supposed to be happening, right? Because I see the world different, I experience the world different, and I accept the world different. You take what they told you to take and run with that. And if that's comfortable for you and you find power in that, fully support that. But what people need to realize is that like there can be several truths. And so just because this is the life that you accept and this is the one I accept, they're not in conflict, right? I'm not coming into your organization trying to tear it down and make sure that, it looks completely like this. But what I am saying is that how about we create more space for others? Because I know that, like, for example, if 20 years passes and all of a sudden every member in my chapter was gay, right? Let's say there's 5 members, all 5 of them are gay. People would have an issue with that. But for the past 100+ years, everybody has been straight or perceived straight, and you all have not had any problems. So what does that say, right? What does that say about you creating space and making things for others and really pushing the Black agenda and social justice, which a lot of these Black D9 orgs have been rooted in, and have members that have done these things. So what does that really say for you?
How do you maintain love and joy for your organization while having to fight that way all day, every day?
One of the main ways that I maintain joy is um like creating space for people younger than me, right? And what I mean by creating space is not necessarily saying that like, oh, okay, well, now I'm, everybody in here will talk about their sexuality and gender experience and things of that nature, right? But letting them know that there's actually more ways that you can experience the world and letting them know that you can be in this space, hold leadership in this space, empower in this space by being whoever you are, right? Um, so for example, as stereotypical as this wants to be, I hate sports. Like, cannot stand sports. I've tried, I've given it my all. Like, I really have, but I'm just not gonna run home to watch a game. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Love LeBron, but no sports. And so
Why do you love LeBron? That's so random.
LeBron is my favorite sports team. Um, look, you can't like greatness is greatness. I don't care if I like the field or not. Like if somebody's great, they great. And I just, I gotta tip my hat to that. So it is what it is. But obviously we're in NBA finals times and all this other stuff and yada yada yada. So they're always constantly talking about sports. And they make a joke like, Byron, you got us for the whole month of like, I think July, there's no real sports or something going on, that like the whole month of July is all yours or whatever. But I'm quick to throw in like, oh yeah, y'all, Beyonce just did this and here's the Beyonce clip. Or I'll even throw in clips from Alok or other Black queer people or just different things, right, that expand the narrative. And then what are other things that I do? Like really just being myself in the space, right? And so that's where I find the peace, that whether you like me or not, and that might come with some conflict and you might get tore up and we might go at it or whatever, but I'm not compromising nothing no more. Like I'm not finna do something to make you feel comfortable that this space has always remained the same, right? I'm not going to be like, okay, well, I'll watch this game just because the Qs love sports and they'll be comfortable in their space and I won't break their bubble. That's actually what I'm trying to do, is break y'all bubble, right? Because y'all level of comfort has created so much, right? That like even us having this conversation today is wild, right? The fact that Bayer Rust and Langston Hughes and other members like get questioned or things about their legacy get it taken away from them simply because of their sexual orientation is like mind blowing, right? Like, oh, okay, these people did such amazing things, but now all of a sudden, just because they might have had a boyfriend, well,
Yeah, and I don't know. I remember as a kid, Byron Rustin wasn't on the Omega's website as a notable member for many, many years. I feel like some chapters do it, but generally most people don't know Byron was an Omega, or that Langston Hughes was an Omega, and get like they don't. Most people don't connect those dots that way. Is there a queer community of Qs that support you?
So I've met plenty of queer Qs and we talk and we have conversation or whatever. It's not like no like group message or anything, and they probably exist or whatever, but I think beforehand, when those moments had got offered to me, I was so like not ready that I didn't push myself into that space, right? And so now that I am, like, it's just one of those things that, like, I'm pretty much open to people having conversation. Like a quick Q reached out to me and was just telling me how, like, on Instagram, like how like I'm inspiring to them and things of that nature, and how like they love how I rip the frat, and like how they don't have the relationship with their chapter that I have. So like I think it's also a blessing that even though my chapter hasn't been perfect in the past, like I'm still able to be in that space and don't like, but even though there was a time where I was getting ready to denounce, um, but I, moved past that, worked through that, because it was one of those conversations that I had with myself, like, why am I the one that has to leave? Like, I didn't even do anything. You're the one being hateful. If anybody got to go, it's you. I'm not going nowhere. So,
What are you the most proud of being Black and queer?
um, just really the freedom to like being Black already is off the chain, right? Like being Black is so creative, it's fun, it's funny. Like I ain't never seen a group of people before make a joke out of anything, right? Like being Black is wild. Like the fashion, the stuff, like everything about being Black is dope. And so then to add on that extra layer of being queer, of like having even more freedom expression, right? And so like just being able to do things unapologetically without ever having that thought in my head anymore, like, oh, this is too feminine, or this is too masculine, or this is like that level of freedom is powerful. Like not worrying about that stuff no more, not caring about that stuff. Like I gave that stuff way too much power. And so like to be able to move in the world exactly how I want to move in the world is like mind blowing.
Where do you feel the most safe as a Black queer person?
You said the most safe?
Where do you feel the most safe as a Black queer person?
I think a lot of times, now I'm in my life and everything of that nature, like I always have some sense of safety, right? Because it's complicated, right? So I have a sense of safety because of the people that I've built around me and that I know care about me, but there are spaces where I know that like that's not gonna exist, right? Or but I think the safeness comes from not necessarily like the physical being in the space, but actually like the people that are in the space with me, right? And so a lot of times though, like there is complications, like you might run into a queue that hates you just for your existence, right? I remember one time being at a conclave and this bro had on a hat, and my neo wanted a hat just like that. So me and my neo, I'm like, "Dude, so where I asked the queue, I was like, dog, where'd you get your hat from?" And he's like, he said something like basically saying we couldn't get that because whatever, right? People love to be exclusive with clothes. But long story short, he then goes to say, randomly, and I'm provoked. And now that I think about it, I was like, okay, that was probably a shot at me. He was like, yeah, and I just seen on the internet that 2 Kappas got married, and we got to make sure they don't come into our fraternity and stuff like that, right? And it's just one of those things that like here we are at a conclave doing all this other stuff, and that's what comes to your mind, right? Like, which is just mind blowing. Like,
so they weren't 2 Kappas. One was one person. One of the persons was 2 Kappa. The other one was not. This happened to wedding colors were red and white, but that wasn't the. Yeah.
But even if that was the case, like even
if I'm just saying it was the clip went viral, but it wasn't true. They also didn't include how his line brothers and chapter showed up for the wedding and supported it. Like all this shit that nobody considers when telling that story. But it's sad that it was. It's also sad that it was weaponized against people like you. That's just whack.
Yeah, and so those moments make you feel like you gotta withdraw some, right? But then now that I'm older, it's more about leaning in, like, okay, well, if that's how you feel, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like you can't stop that and I can't stop it either. Like, so why are you even worried about that? Like people really spend too much energy worrying about things that they have no control over. Like if you put that energy into ending world hunger, we would not have a starving child out here. How about that? Like
last question. What is one thing, or how could Omega Psi Phi be better to their queer members?
I think just actually honoring them and like letting people know that like these members exist, right? And so like what I mean by that is that we're running into Pride Month, and then like unless once again, even thinking about Black History Month, everybody got to make a a little poster, a banner, and all this other stuff that you can see on Instagram that says, Omega Psi Phi and all the other D9 support Black History Month or celebrate Black History Month. The same thing should be for Pride Month, right? Because we have members that are Black and queer and things of that nature, right? And so I think that it's one of those things that until we actually start opening space and have conversations about that, and then also let's take a look at like some of the dress codes and things of that nature, right? Because a lot of like I'm a masculine presenting person, but I hate wearing suits. Like I work at a job and I don't ever wear a suit. Like I don't ever wear business casual. What I'm wearing right now is actually what I would wear to work. I'm wearing like this shirt right here and some jogging pants. And so like, and I work in an office setting at a university. And so having conversations about like, is this dress code really that important? Like, if somebody came in here in a skirt or a dress or just anything of that nature or not even in a suit at all, does that mean we can't have business? Like, we got to take a real look at how like some of these things that we have are blocking members from being in there, and then respectability politics. Like, you really are like stopping people like from coming in meetings because they don't have on a black suit, but they got a navy blue one, so they can't learn what's going on in there. That sounds real stupid to me, but hey, I'm not in no leadership position. And so I guess I can't throw no shade, but I'm not financial right now, but I do plan on getting financial and actually like shaking the table a little bit.
Okay, let me know how that goes.
You're gonna see me 2 months later shaking and stirred.
No, I also want to encourage you to create the experience you want to have. Because there as a little boy or a little person who might need you to get free in that space. So it's important for you to fight that fight. I also just want to make sure you are mindful of like some places aren't built for the things we want them to be, right? And that's okay. Like,
right.
I remember a lesbian woman talking about Spelman one time, and she was talking about like Spelman does what they do very well, but they don't do the other thing well because they weren't built on that particular purpose. So it could evolve eventually, but they have a lot more work to do more than just jump into this thing because somebody said they need it, right? So again, you should still fight and do that. I'm just fight intentionally to protect your heart, build the community, get loved up on, so you can endure that fight for a long time, not fight and burn out.
Absolutely.
Because there are people who are queer who need you in Omega. We gotta meet each other. So
absolutely. And so one thing I want to share with you before we get out of here is that like I am a director of the LGBT Center here. And one of the events that I did, well, I've done 2 events. One was called Coming Out, and the second one was called Hidden Figures, right? And in the event of Hidden Figures, I highlighted Greek members through artwork that were a part of the LGBT community historically, but didn't get to be celebrated because of the time frame that we're in. And so it was really about like radical celebration and actually talking about like there's other ways that we can do like change and protest and all these other things don't always look like a fight, right? They don't always look like us being bloodied and head down and all these other things, right? That's a part of it too, but it also includes way more than that. And so one of the things I want to show you is this picture. This is what the artwork looks like of Langston Hughes, and I'm sure that the glare, but in the picture, we also added a piece that showed that, the element of a historical figure with that. And it was just having conversation with all students of the D9, right? Whether they identify as queer, straight, or wherever they want to in the spectrum. And just like having a conversation about radical celebration and how erasure of history doesn't just hurt queer people, but it also hurts yourself, right? Because who gets to draw the line of where we start erasing history? And as Black people, we know what erasure of history does. And I think it's time for us to start having conversations about how being homophobic doesn't necessarily just hurt people that are queer, but it also hurts you as well too, right? Because it stops you from creating yourself. It stops you from having your own conversations about gender and things of that nature, because nobody in this world is extremely the top masculine. Whatever the standard is, nobody's going to meet that. Just like the standard of femininity, we all meet somewhere in the middle. And so until we start having those conversations and open up ourselves to have those spaces to be in the middle and be comfortable in the middle or wherever, which way we swing, you're not going to do nothing but hurt yourself. And I think that like leaning into and getting to know with and experiencing Black queer people, and especially trans people as well, Black trans women, allows you to learn more and really digest yourself in a completely different way. Because, like I said previously in the interview, bringing it back full circle, is that a huge part of being queer is really being able to return to yourself and create your identity based on how you feel and how you want to be seen and perceived in the world.
I should. Well, thank you, Byron, for giving us your time. Thank you for allowing us to be your witness. It was a very interesting conversation, and I appreciate you.
No problem.